was pinned beside the yellow paper, and the foreigner took off his hat. "I have to thank you all, gentlemen," he said, and wrapping the remainder of the handkerchief round his bleeding hand, he resumed his walk with an overwhelming stateliness. While all the rest paused in some disorder, little Mr. Auberon Quin ran after the stranger and stopped him with hat in hand. Considerably to everybody's astonishment, he addressed him in purest Spanish. "Señor," he said in that language, "pardon a hospitality, perhaps indiscreet, towards one who appears to be a distinguished but solitary guest in London. Will you do me and my friends, with whom you have held some conversation, the honour of lunching with us at the adjoining restaurant?" The man in the green uniform had turned a fiery colour of pleasure at the mere sound of his own language, and he accepted the invitation with that profusion of bows which so often shows, in the case of the southern races, the falsehood of the notion that ceremony has nothing to do with feeling. "Señor," he said, "your language is my own, but all my love for my people shall not lead me to deny to yours the possession of so chivalrous an entertainer. Let me say that the tongue is Spanish, but the heart is English." And he passed, with the rest, into Chickananis. "Now, perhaps," said Barker, over the fish and sherry, intensely polite, but burning with curiosity, "perhaps it would be rude of me to ask why you did that?" "Did what, Señor?" asked the guest, who spoke English quite well, though in a manner indefinably American. "Well," said the Englishman in some confusion, "I mean, tore a strip off the hoarding and cut yourself?" "To tell you that, Señor," answered the other, with a certain sad pride, "involves merely telling you who I am. I am Juan del Fuego, President of Nicaragua." The manner with which the President of Nicaragua leant back and drank his sherry showed that to him this explanation covered all the facts observed, and a great deal more. Barker's brow, however, was still a little clouded. "And the yellow paper," he began, with anxious friendliness, "and the red rag?" "The yellow paper and the red rag," said Fuego, with indescribable grandeur, "are the colours of Nicaragua." "But Nicaragua," began Barker, with great hesitation. "Nicaragua is no longer a—" "Nicaragua has been conquered like Athens. Nicaragua has been annexed like Jerusalem," cried the old man, with amazing fire. "The Yankee and the German and the brute powers of modernity have trampled it with the hoofs of oxen, but Nicaragua is not dead. Nicaragua is an idea." Auberon Quin suggested timidly, "A brilliant idea." "Yes," said the foreigner, snatching at the word, "you are right, generous Englishman. An idea brilliant, a burning thought. Señor, you asked me why, in my desire to see the colours of my country, I snatched at paper and blood. Can you not understand the ancient sanctity of colours? The Church has her symbolic colours, and think of what colours mean to us. Think of the position of one like myself, who can see nothing but those two colours, nothing but the red and the yellow. To me all shapes are equal. All common and noble things are in a democracy of combination. Wherever there is a field of marigolds and the red cloak of an old woman, there is Nicaragua. Wherever there is a field of poppies and a yellow patch of sand, there is Nicaragua. Wherever there is a lemon and a red sunset, there is my country. Wherever I see a red pillar box and a yellow sunset, there my heart beats. Blood and a splash of mustard can be my heraldry. If there be yellow mud and red mud in the same ditch, it is better to me than white stars." "And if," said Quin, with equal enthusiasm, "there should happen to be yellow wine and red wine at the same lunch, you could not confine yourself to sherry. Let me order some Burgundy, and complete, as it were, a sort of Nicaraguan heraldry in your inside." Barker was fiddling with his knife, and was evidently making up his mind to say something with the intense nervousness of the amiable Englishman. "I am to understand, then," he said at last, with a cough, "that you were the President of Nicaragua when it made its one must of course agree its quite heroic resistance to The ex-president of Nicaragua waved his hand. "You need not hesitate in speaking to me," he said. "I am quite fully aware that the whole tendency of the world of to day is against Nicaragua and against me. I shall not consider it any diminution of your evident courtesy if you say what you think of the misfortunes that have laid my republic in ruins." Barker looked immeasurably relieved and gratified. "You are most generous, President," he said, with some hesitation over the title, "and I will take advantage of your generosity to express the doubts which, I must confess, we moderns have about such things as the Nicaraguan independence." "So your sympathies are," said Del Fuego quite calmly, "with the big nation which—" Pardon me, President," said Barker warmly. "My sympathies are with no nation. You misunderstand, I think, the modern intellect. We do not disapprove of the fire and extravagance of such commonwealths as yours, only to become more extravagant on a larger scale. We do not condemn Nicaragua because we think Britain ought to be more Nicaraguan. We do not discourage small nationalities because we wish large nationalities to have all their smallness, all their uniformity of outlook, all their exaggeration of spirit. If I differ with the greatest respect from your Nicaraguan enthusiasm, it is not because a nation or 10 nations were against you. It is because civilization was against you. We moderns believe in a great cosmopolitan civilization, one which shall include all the talents of all the absorbed peoples." "The Señor will forgive me," said the President. "May I ask the Señor how, under ordinary circumstances, he catches a wild horse?" "I never catch a wild horse," replied Barker with dignity. "Precisely," said the other. "And there ends your absorption of the talents. That is what I complain of your cosmopolitanism. When you say you want all the peoples to unite, you really mean that you want all the peoples to unite to learn the tricks of your people. If the Bedouin Arab does not know how to read, some English missionary or schoolmaster must be sent to teach him how to read. But no one ever says, 'This schoolmaster does not know how to ride on a camel. Let us pay a Bedouin to teach him.' You say your civilization will include all talents. Will it? Do you really mean to say that at the moment when the Eskimo has learnt to vote for a county council, you will have learnt to spear a walrus? I recur to the example I gave. In Nicaragua we had a way of catching wild horses by lassoing the 4 feet, which was supposed to be the best in South America. If you are going to include all the talents, go and do it. If not, permit me to say what I have always said, that something went out from the world when Nicaragua was civilized." "Something, perhaps," replied Barker, "but that something a mere barbarian dexterity. I do not know that I could chip flints as well as a primeval man, but I know that civilization can make these knives which are better, and I trust to civilization." "You have good authority," answered the Nicaraguan. "Many clever men like you have trusted to civilization. Many clever Babylonians, many clever Egyptians, many clever men at the end of Rome. Can you tell me, in a world that is flagrant with the failures of civilization, what there is particularly immortal about yours?" "I think you do not quite understand, President, what ours is," answered Barker. "You judge it rather as if England was still a poor and pugnacious island. You have been long out of Europe. Many things have happened." "And what," asked the other, "would you call the summary of those things?" "The summary of those things," answered Barker with great animation, "is that we are rid of the superstitions. And in becoming so, we have not merely become rid of the superstitions which have been most frequently and most enthusiastically so described. The superstition of big nationalities is bad, but the superstition of small nationalities is worse. The superstition of reverencing our own country is bad, but the superstition of reverencing other people's countries is worse. It is so everywhere, and in 100 ways. The superstition of monarchy is bad, and the superstition of aristocracy is bad, but the superstition of democracy is the worst of all." The old gentleman opened his eyes with some surprise. "Are you then," he said, "no longer a democracy in England?" Barker laughed. The situation